Bubula channel.
Bubula channel.
Bubula channel.
Bubula channel.
In the palace garden, birds chirped happily, and flowers bloomed brightly. Snow White sat gracefully on the soft grass, enjoying the peaceful day. Snow White's mother passed away when she was very young, and the king married another woman, a beautiful but vain queen. Inside the queen's luxurious palace chamber, she gently stroked the frame of her magic mirror, smiling confidently. The mirror glowed with golden light and revealed a translucent face. The queen asked, Magic mirror, who is the fairest of them all?" The mirror replied, "My queen, you're as beautiful beyond compare. But now, Snow White is the fairest of them all." Hearing this, the queen's face turned angry, and the light in the room dimmed. The queen shouted furiously, "How can this be? How could she be more beautiful than me?" Then in a low voice, she muttered, "Snow White, I will not let you take away my glory." Calling for her huntsman, she commanded him, "Take Snow White into the forest and get rid of her." The huntsman bowed his head and replied softly, "Yes, my queen." The huntsman approached Snow White in the palace garden. As he raised his knife to strike, his eyes filled with hesitation. Finally, he dropped the knife. He shouted, "Run away, princess. The queen wants your life, but I cannot harm such a pure soul." Snow White, trembling with fear, replied, "Thank you. I will forever remember your kindness." Deep within the thick forest, a small wooden cottage was hidden among the flowers and trees. Warm white smoke gently rose from its chimney. Lost and wandering in the forest, Snow White discovered the tiny cottage nestled in the greenery. Snow White pushed open the door and gasped with surprise at the small chairs and the neatly arranged furniture inside. She exclaimed, "This place is so small, but it's so cute." Later, when the 7 dwarfs returned home, they stopped in their tracks, astonished to see Snow White standing in their house. The leader of the dwarfs asked, "Who are you? Why are you in our home?" Snow White smiled and said, "I'm so sorry. I got lost in the forest and was hoping I could stay here for a few days." After hearing about Snow White's troubles, the dwarfs all said together, "Of course." The queen, furious to learn that Snow White was still alive, transformed herself into an old woman and headed to the forest with a poisonous apple. The old woman offered the apple to Snow White, who curiously accepted it. The old woman said persuasively, "My dear girl, take a bite. This is the sweetest apple you'll ever taste." Snow White, innocently trusting her, replied, "Thank you." But as soon as Snow White took a bite, she fell to the ground, unconscious. The queen smirked with satisfaction and said with an evil laugh, "Now, I am the fairest of them all." Then she disappeared into the forest. In the quiet forest, Snow White lay inside a glass coffin, surrounded by the grieving dwarfs, who prayed for her with heavy hearts. Snow White's beauty and tragedy drew many visitors, including a prince who had traveled from afar. Standing by her coffin, the prince gently stroked Snow White's cheek, his face filled with sorrow. He said, "She is so beautiful. If only I could have her, I would cherish her forever." The prince kissed Snow White, and suddenly, she opened her eyes and coughed out the poisonous apple. The dwarfs cheered with joy. Snow White, still weak, asked, "What happened to me?" The prince smiled warmly and said, "You've come back. I will protect you forever." Snow White and the prince returned to the castle, where they held a grand wedding. As for the queen, she fled in disgrace, never to be seen again. And so, love and kindness triumphed in the end. Snow White and her prince lived happily ever after. If you like the animation, please subscribe, thumb up and share. Appreciate.